Hello there, you beautiful soul, and welcome back to another Culture Talks segment with your host and founder of Cultured Society. I am here with another special guest today. And as a matter of fact, this Culture Talks series was only going to be for the month of February. And I ended up booking 20 interviews, which was by far one of my greatest accomplishments. I didn't imagine that so many people would accept my invitation to be a part of these conversations. But everyone that I asked it gladly accepted and were very challenged by the questions that were being asked. And the reason why I was so inspired to ask this series of questions on this particular series for this podcast was because I truly believe that we are walking into a completely different phase of our existence on this planet. And I, through this journey that I have been on, have had the opportunity to meet so many amazing souls throughout all of my moves, throughout my career changes, my travels, and have just been so inspired by so many people that are creating waves on this planet. And Mrs. Olga Maria, I have had the opportunity to stay in communication with through many phases of my life. And we actually had the opportunity to live together when I lived in Chicago back in 2010. And, I feel like a lot of people that I have met throughout my journey have been a mirror reflection of me. And in fact, Olga and I are both Capricorns, and we have so many similarities and characteristics. We have so much in common in the work that we're doing today. And so I wanted to invite Olga to be a part of this conversation because she is just an inspiration, not only in within her culture, but also within a lot of different cultures in her city. And now I want to say that she is an inspiration globally. And so I am just so honored to have Olga as a guest today for us to be able to have conversations about philosophy, life experiences, and divine purpose, which is so important because although I'd like to say that I know and am aligned with a lot of people that are walking in their divine purpose, there are still quite a bit of people who are seeking their own. And I am here to inspire you, to motivate you, and to show you that you also have a divine purpose within your own life. And that if you have not yet found it, that you are on the path to encountering it soon. So, Olga Maria, also known as Liberating Mella, is a bicultural Chicago native, creative author, kombucha master brewer, maker, POC wellness advocate, and overall conscious explorer. She has created and curated art and wellness based content ranging from art shows, workshops to products. Author of Damaged Goods, Learning, Growing, and Letting Go, a book that explores a young woman's coming of age story and the challenges she goes through as she moves from hopeless to the master of her destiny. Liberating Maya is her personal brand. It celebrates transforming moments that were meant to hurt into what all allows her to thrive. She is the founder of Conscious Explorer, a wellness shop that cultivates creative, conscious, healthy living and makes fresh handmade products to nourish the body and lift the spirit. Currently, Olga Maria serves as the communications and operations specialist for the Health and Wellness Department of Chicago Public Schools, focused on creating marketing and communications that engage underserved communities, providing access to social services, healthcare, and nutrition. And with this, I introduce the beautiful Olga to this amazing platform. Welcome, Olga, to this Culture Talks conversation.
Thank you, Bex. Thank you for having me. I feel so honored to be part of this series because I know you know many interesting people. So thank you for having me.
Absolutely, absolutely. So It's so crazy because I was just telling Olga before I pressed record that her and I were together 6 years ago this weekend in Kansas, Lawrence, Kansas, when I was in one of my transitions. And Olga has had the opportunity to visit me a couple of times in the different cities that I've lived in. And it's been such an experience and such a journey to be able to see the evolution of Olga and also just to see what she's accomplishing throughout her journey. So, if you have been following this series, or if you have not been following this series and you're new to these conversations, I have come up with a series of questions that are the same for every single person that comes on this panel. And so what's interesting is that although we are all part of one body, I'd like to say we are all one body in Christ. And you may not have a religious background and you don't have to, but we all represent a human body and we all have very similar components in how we were created. However, we all have a specific DNA code that is specific for your own life purpose. And because of that, we have very different life philosophies. We have different experiences. We have, different ways of living our life on a day to day basis. So, although these questions are the same, these conversations are all so different. And so it's been really cool, unique to really unfold, these conversations and to tap into the psyche of the person who is right in front of me. So I like to start off this conversation with a question about philosophy. So, Olga, what is your life's philosophy?
I had to think about this because, as you know, I've evolved, right? And I've gone through so many stages of becoming who I am now that many ideas that I had have changed. So I thought about what has been the thing that has been a constant. And I believe that my philosophy and my constant has been that I am here to uncover, discover, and recover who I am. And that may sound very simple, like we're here to be genuinely, authentically us, and I'm here to be genuinely, authentically me. That's my life philosophy. But it's actually something that's very difficult because we get filled with other people's ideas of who we're supposed to be and what we're supposed to do and at what timeline and when it's supposed to happen. And when those things are not happening, they are draining, and then it causes a whole line of negative situations, right? And negative mentality. But we're born with limitless and uh, boundless ways of being, right? But it's not until we start growing that we realize that there's so many fears, and that those fears kind of entrap us and keep us small. So the reason that we're here, or the reason that I believe we're here, is to really recover, discover, and uncover who we are so we can get back to that limitless, boundless mentality.
Mm, yes. Yes, I just got chills. Yes, it is so true. We live in a society that is very confining. It's almost as though we are living in a box. And I know that
Mhm.
you've traveled a lot and you've had the opportunity to explore, which is where your conscious explorer comes from. And it's true. As women, oftentimes we're very limited as well, and then coming from the cultural backgrounds that we come from, because Olga, and we'll talk about a lot more about this, but Olga is of Guatemalan descent. I'm Mexican. And, there are a lot of limitations within our cultures, especially being women. And, another reason why we're having these conversations is because there are no limits, regardless of what background you come from. what gender you are, what age, or even like the type of upbringing. You can always change the trajectory of your existence at any given point. You just have to really tap into that. So, which brings me to my next question. How has that philosophy evolved through the years?
Mm, well, it's evolved much, right? It's been constantly changing, like I said, but the thing that I've realized is that although it is about me discovering who I am, the world doesn't revolve around me, right? And that what I had labeled before as negative situations happening to me were never about anybody or anything else doing something to me, right? Because I used to be a person that took everything personal. And it took me a lot of years to figure out that the things that hurt me the most were never personal. That and there's a lot of things that I don't know, but what I know now for certain is that it's never about anybody or anything else, but what I'm here to learn about the situation, right? Uh, and so in those situations that seem like they hurt you the most, or that they bother you the most, or it seems like it's just happening to you, that's the very seed of growth. And if you choose to see it that way, which it's taken me many years to see it that way, then you can really evolve, transmute, and transform that situation into something that was meant to hurt you, but ends up growing you and thriving you and taking you to the next step. So that's how it's evolved. It's evolved and it's changed into knowing that it's not about anything or anyone else. It's always about you. It's always about what do you have to learn about that situation in specific. If it hurt you the most, then what is the part of you that still needs healing, right? Like where did it trigger you? Because that's the part that you got to work on you the most. And that's the part that I needed to work on and still do. But it's always a situation or a light bulb for me to realize, okay, why did that hurt? Or why did that bother? Or why am I stressed? Where is that coming from? Where within me have I not healed, or that I need to really focus on to really transmute and to get to that next level of being me?
That's good. That's good. And I know because you and I have been doing a lot of similar internal work. And that internal work is the hardest because nobody really wakes up one day and says, "Oh, I'm going to face myself in the mirror and admit that I've been the problem all along," right? No, I mean nobody wants to do that. That is one of the things that really hurts our ego the most. And to be able to admit that and to be able to go within and to recognize that nothing really is personal, although we'd like to think that it is, but it isn't, and that's amazing that you've been able to do that, to be able to transmute the negativity that oftentimes bogs us down on a day-to-day basis, to really keep us in victim mentality, right? And we don't end up growing that way. I know, and I'm a firm believer that our circle of influence has a very, very massive impact on the way that we evolve. So, how has your upbringing and circle of influence impacted the way that you live and think today?
Mm. Well, so I was brought up in a very conservative way of thinking. So when I had the chance to really think for myself, I wanted to go full in, right? Like I wanted to experience the world. I wanted to just do everything and a lot of things that I wasn't allowed to do when I was in a lot of confinement, right? My family was very strict. We also were raised in a very Christian household. That was a very conservative household. So in my 20s, like I really just wanted to experience a lot of that freedom that I felt like I had been um, that I hadn't been allowed to experience, right? So that allowed me to do just that, to get a lot of experience. It also led me to fall on my face very hard. Um, I don't want to say unfortunately, but it also led to me being very cynical about the world, right? Because I put myself in a lot of situations that were probably not the most conducive to growth at the time. So it led me to be very cynical, right? Which kind of, we'll talk about it in a bit, but kind of leads you full circle, because that same cynicism leads you to really think about life in a different way, because you don't necessarily want to be that way. But I think that my upbringing really, in a positive sense, like we got to travel a lot with my family, so I was able to see the world in a different aspect that maybe like my classmates were. But it also led to a lot of restrictions that then led to me to really want to figure out life for myself, which then led to a lot of a lot of heartbreaks, a lot of falling on my face, a lot of disillusions, a lot of things like that, But in the long run, now I'm so thankful for all of those things, because it also led me full circle to me, and to and to really seeking out God, really, right? Because at the end of the day, that was what gave me the most fuel and the one constant, even when I didn't want anything to do with any type of religious means, right? It kind of brought me back to that. So my life has kind of been full circle at this point, and I don't think I even lived. I have so much to live, right? But I feel like I've kind of come back to this place of feeling at home in my own body and in my own life, and that in itself was a journey to get to.
Oh my gosh. So it's so interesting because it's almost as though Olga and I have lived very similar lives, just in different bodies. And isn't that amazing how it's amazing how when you allow yourself to explore, to sometimes be an unconscious explorer, because I feel like a lot of times people in our society are very unconscious. We are walking around a lot of zombies, a lot of zombies. And it's really important for us to allow ourselves to experiment, even sometimes in the most excruciating ways where it really pains you, because a lot of times that's really the only way that will allow ourselves to expand. And so I know exactly what you're talking about when you come full circle, because I'm exactly in that same place where I kind of allowed myself to go opposite ends of what I was taught growing up, to really come to an understanding of yourself. You have to. It's so important for you to allow yourself to journey through your own ideas, because that's really how you develop a mind of your own. You're not really, you are sometimes influenced by society for like a phase, but then it really allows you to kind of come to your own inner voice, especially once you start going inner, like you start to go inward, where you start to take responsibility for where you're at, and recognizing that all the choices that you've made are really no one else's like fault but yours.
Mhm.
Literally brings you back to that foundation. Wouldn't you agree?
Yeah, I mean, well, you also gain responsibility, right? Because there was a stage where I felt like it was what everybody else was doing to me, right? Versus like, that's what I mean by it's never what anybody else is doing or not doing. Nobody owes you anything, first of all, right? Like let's start there. And everybody's on their own journey, to be quite honest. So they're all going through their own things, which is just a reflection of their own personal issues. And but somehow at that point, or at least for me at that point, I didn't know that, right? Like I didn't see the world that way. I didn't know the things that I know now. And I was also somebody that was trying to figure it out. So to me, everything was, you know, what what I was experiencing versus that's what they're experiencing, right? And also knowing like this is not a forever thing, right? These are just stages that we go through. And I'll be at a different stage soon. But anyways, getting back to your question, I feel like it's about taking responsibility for your own life and how you choose to have what perspective you choose to have for life, because my perspective has changed much. And we've talked about this before. Like, I think one time I said to you, I feel like a completely different person than when you and I lived together, right? Like, I'm such a different person. But I had to think about that, and I'm not. Like, I'm still that girl, but I'm that girl that has matured, that has seen, that has learned, that has been able to experience different things. So that is what has led me to this full circle way of thinking. And it's also given me a lot of empathy, right?
Right.
Like it's there's just so many people in this life that you get to live and experience with, and all of those moments are, for me, I cherish them, right? Because they were meant to happen the way that they were meant to happen at the time, because if they hadn't, I wouldn't be who I am now. But you have to be able to see it that way, otherwise you become very um, tortured by events that didn't work out for you, or you become cynical the way I think I became cynical through the later half of my 20s. So it just, yeah, life is always evolving, but the one thing you have to realize is that nothing is forever, and that things are here to teach you about yourself and how to be better, really, right? Like, I think that that's part of why we're here, is to evolve into better human beings and to leave a better legacy.
Absolutely. And going back to the circle of influence, especially because I know that you've had a lot of changes. I definitely have a lot of change, have had a lot of changes through many of my moves that I've gone through. And my circle of influence has changed significantly. And in fact, it seems like as I evolve and mature in my perspective, that my circle of influence seems to get smaller and smaller. And and I mean, you can chime in on this, Olga. You have to be very selective, especially like when you are going through the evolution process, recognizing that everything is energy, right? And that every person that you encounter is somewhat of a mirror of you. And that if there are triggers from people that are in your circle, it's because there are areas of you that need to, look inward, where you recognize that nothing, again, is personal.
Yeah, absolutely. Nothing is personal, and what you have to gain, right? Like, because we tend to see things in retrospect, like what didn't work out, but what did work out? You know, what did you gain? How are you different? Right? Like, and somehow we think like, oh, well, that situation was a waste of time, or I shouldn't have done that, or like, but regrets don't get you anywhere. But if you can see it in retrospect, and then you can, that's where I think for me, transmuting comes from, right? Like, I'm going to take that negative situation, or what is quote unquote negative, and I'm going to use it to really build over here, because I'm going to learn all the lessons from there. And to be honest with you, like, we all fail, right? I've been in situations where I have hurt people. I've been in situations where people have hurt me. So I can learn from both of those situations, right? Like, everybody makes mistakes in both ends of the spectrum. But again, not victimizing yourself or thinking that uh, everything is against you is really gonna uplift you, and it's going to make you better for the next stage, because we're in constant stages of involvement as human beings. Like the person that I am now, I'm not even in the same skin of when I was born, right? Like that was a completely different human, and we're constantly changing. The person that I was at a year old is not even the same person as 2 years old, because cells are actually regenerating and your bones are growing and your joints are growing. So it's actually not even the same, it's not even the same structure that you're in, right? So that, and I'm not the same person that I was 2 years ago. That's the whole point. You're not supposed to. If you are, then there's probably something wrong because you're not getting it. You're not learning. You're not using your experiences for something better.
Absolutely. And I'm glad you pointed that out, because when every night when we go to sleep, our body regenerates itself. And when we wake up in the morning, literally, we have new skin. Like we're literally regenerating every single day. And so when you don't realize that we are a constant evolution, there remains a lot of blockages within you. You stay stagnant. You literally, it's like swampy water that's not moving, right? And you have to allow yourself to allow that regenerative process by taking action on the very things. So like, nourishing your body properly, and even reframing your mindset on a daily basis, because that's a choice. The rewiring of your brain is a choice, and allowing your cells to expand. I like to say this a lot, because this is one thing that I learned through my transformation process, was that we have 200 billion cells in our brain and trillions of cells in our bodies. And majority of our society is maybe utilizing 10% of those cells in our brain. So that gives so much room for expansion. And we do that through exploring and learning every day, and making changes in our daily habits every day. And, like doing the necessary steps every day for us to be able to transform, because we have the capacity to do that. I mean, I remember when Olga and I became, well, we'd known each other for a while prior to me moving back to Chicago for the second time in 2010. And I am a witness that Olga looked very different at that time. And so did I. In fact, I was 45 pounds heavier than I am now. And so we both have gone through like a radical transformation.
I
Exterior.
don't even see it as radical because it happens so gradually for me, like, and going back to, I guess it's become the theme of our talk, is like transmuting or taking what was supposed to be negative into positive. I was getting really sick. Like I was really sick all the time, right? Like it came to a point where people at work were like, "Are you okay?" Because I had really bad allergies that made me look like I had the flu every single day. This was over 10 years ago now, I think. And that really was the catalyst for me to figure out what I needed to do in order to feel healthy, right? And I remember going to the doctor and the doctor saying, "Yeah, you got to take like these 7 medications." And I'm like, "What? 7 medications?" Like I'm in my early 20s at that point, right? Like I don't know a lot about health, but I know that taking 7 different medications is not a good thing. I got to figure it out. And that's really like where my wellness journey started, because I started really researching on my own and figuring out, what was I supposed to be eating, because I was tired every day. And I was also eating a lot of crap during that time. And I learned so much about food, and not just food, but like what I was putting on my body, right? Like even cosmetics and lotions and perfumes, which kind of led, that would be another stage of my life where I started doing ConsciousXplorer, which was a lot of therapeutic grade body products, right? That was that was helping not only with the physical response, which for me at that time was allergies that were making me really sick, but also on a therapeutic level, I had a lot of anxiety. Like I dealt with a lot of anxiety. I had anxiety attacks. I had in my very early 20s, I dealt with depression and that type of thing, right? So like all of that kind of led me to figure out, what do I need to do to keep myself healthy, to keep my mind healthy. And like you said, a lot of it was what I was consuming, which I wasn't consuming healthy foods. Like nobody, I mean, that's such a thing now. Like you see it all over Instagram, and if you don't know, then I don't know where you're at. But now there's just so much education and so many platforms, and it's become something trendy. But at the time, it wasn't. I mean, you remember in our early 20s, it wasn't trendy to be healthy. I mean, I kind of feel like I've been uh, on the I'm always like on the cusp of like knowing these trends, only because I needed to research them for my own like state of mind, right? Like it didn't feel good to always be feeling like I was sick. And it didn't feel good when people started pointing it out, like, are you sick every day? Like, and I wasn't, but I had such bad allergies, which I was probably having a reaction from just so much junk that I was eating, and things that weren't junk but weren't good for my body, because everybody's body is different and everybody reacts to different things, which I think has a lot to do with being responsible for yourself, right? Like you have to be responsible for yourself, and you can't just go with the flow of what everybody else is saying, because what is good for one person may not necessarily be good, right? And so you have to learn you have to learn your body, you have to learn your mind, you have to learn your triggers. Everything is very holistic. It's not about one thing. It's not about fixing one thing. It's not about, if I lose weight, I'm going to feel so much better, because, well, how is your mind, right? Like, how is your heart? How is your spiritual life? So we are such complex creatures, and nobody really teaches you about all of those levels. Sometimes people grow up in very scholarly homes, and they teach them about the importance of education. And some people grow up in very healthy homes, and they teach them how to eat. And some people grow up in very religious homes, and they teach them all the things that they're not supposed to do. But life and a human is much more than just one thing. It's stages, and it's levels, and it's being in sync with all of those things, right? And we're never going to get it perfect, because we're humans. But it's in that striving, and it's in that journey, that you really get to learn who you are, what affects you, what your triggers are, right? Like even with food, right? If you have allergies, you have to go through a cleanse, and then bring in these foods little by little to figure out what is actually triggering your immune system, because you don't know unless you kind of release everything and then kind of allow them. But what you have to be, conscious, you have to pay attention, you have to be deliberate with what you're consuming, so that you know what affects you. And it's in that same manner, it's everything else, right? It's like, it's our spirituality, it's our growing, it's our involvement. Be conscious, beware, and be purposeful about what you're doing. Because if you're not, then you're just living every day as if it was yesterday. And are you really growing, or are you just existing? Yeah.
Yes,
there's so much to that, right? But we tend to just focus on one thing, and we're more than one thing.
absolutely. Well, so a part of this cultured society brand, whatever you want to call it, culture, it really is about holistic. And I teach this in everything that I do, because we are holistic beings. We are mind, body, and spirit. And you can't address one without addressing the other two. It's you can't just go to the gym and expect your physical body to change and for you to change, because if you're just changing your physical body, you're living a very superficial life and you're doing it for all the wrong reasons. Because holistic health is something that everybody should aspire to live. Because I mean, if you're not cleansing your heart, if you're not cleansing your soul, which is really like in the center of your body, which is your gut intuition, like people don't really tap into that very much, but it's literally your solar system. It sends signals to your entire body and most importantly, your brain. So there's always going to be that connection, always. So if you're even experiencing mental health issues, depression, anxiety, all of that really comes from what's going on in your solar system, your gut. And so, food, I'm glad you mentioned that because food is everything. And we're not taught that in our society. We're taught pharmaceuticals, take a pill, pop a pill for everything. But no, it's really important for us to get to the root of the problem. And like Olga said, every person, even though we have a very similar structure, right? And if you do heal your gut, like you're pretty much healing every aspect of your body. However, different foods affect different people differently. So it is important for you to go through that process of elimination and really tune into what it is that your body needs in order for you to make those changes that are going to help you adapt to the environments that you're living in. And it's all divinely connected. And I know that this next question, Olga, is going to be very in line with what we're already talking about, because this is what you do for your line of work. You teach people how to be more conscious. So do you believe that your line of work infects our society with positivity? And if so, how so?
Yeah, absolutely. I think now the person that I've become lives very much on purpose and consciously. Um, I think that my 9 to 5, right, is I work in public health. So I am very deliberate about communicating health programs to underserved communities. So my creativity uh, is really what's going to get people to understand what they need to do to keep their families healthy, and to take advantage of those programs. Now, also, I have ConsciousXplorer, which is like my um, some people call them side hustles, but I would like to call it my my passion, right? And it's kind of like what fuels my creativity. And that is more like what I need to do in order to fuel who I am as this creative person. And also to give an outlet to the things that I have learned for myself. You know, we talked a little bit about all of the research that I did when I was really trying to be healthier, and all of that was I put that into place into Conscious Explorer, creating products that were clean products that were not only um, helping your body, but they were actually helping your mind center. So yeah, I guess the answer to that is yes.
Yes, well, then that goes very much in line with what I'm going to ask you next. And I want you to go elaborate, because I'm sure that it wasn't always like this and it was a journey for you to be able to get here. But do you believe that the work that you do every day now is aligned with your calling and higher purpose?
Yeah, I had to think about that question because I have not always felt that way. There's been times where I'm like, am I really doing what I'm supposed to be doing? Am I doing, am I using my gifts, right? Like, am I fully taking advantage of what I was here to do? Um, but I think in the last year, one of the things I've realized is that whatever you're doing at the moment is what your purpose is. We strive for so much, more than what we actually have. But it's only you only have the moment, right? So like if your job is to make a sandwich, that is your purpose. And I'm not kidding, like that's your purpose. Like when somebody makes food with love, you can feel that. When somebody is just sloppy making something, you can also feel that, right? So it doesn't matter what you're doing. If you're doing it with love and you're pouring your heart into what you're doing, then that is your purpose. And you can find your purpose in every stage, right? And so yeah, you're right. Like it's taken me a while to find I shouldn't say it's taken me a while, but it took me a while to find a career path that I really loved, right? And that I felt like was part of my purpose. And we're evolving humans, so like your mind always changes and like you want to do other things. And am I really doing everything? Like, can I do something else? Should I be making art? And especially if you're a creative, because I want to do so many things, right? But are you doing what you have been tasked to do at the moment with love and passion? Because if you are, then yes, then that's what you should be doing, right? And even that's why there's people that get to these very high places and coveted jobs that make so much money, or even their dreams, right? Like their dream job, and are very unfulfilled. And that's because you haven't found your purpose within that day, within that task. Like our humanly mind always wants more, or to be doing something else. But I have been tricking my mind into finding the purpose in the task that I don't necessarily like or want to do. And it really changes my outlook of the day.
Yes. Yes, that's so good. And it goes back to I started a wellness series this March with a woman, her name's Bonnie Maley. And we talk about accepting what is right here, right now. And that really gives you the ability to tap into your intuitive mind and to recognize what Olga is saying is very true, is that finding purpose in every task that you're doing, whether you're making a sandwich, whether you are cleaning toilets, whether you are a janitor somewhere, whether you're doing lawn work, like everything is divinely aligned. And we need people to do all those things. But when you're doing it with love and passion and just enthusiasm, right? And joy, you really can find purpose and intention in everything that you do. And it really allows our days to unfold so much more beautifully with happiness, contentment, joy. Because oftentimes we are living in a society where we're always striving for more, and through that striving for more, we tend to be misaligned. And I'm guilty of that because I did that for so many years. I was chasing money. I was chasing success in a way that really made me feel very stressed out and just like pulled in so many different directions. And when I realized that success really has nothing to do with material possessions, it has nothing to do with money, and everything to do with how you feel internally. And when you feel aligned holistically, mind, body, and spirit, and you are able to really perceive what you're doing with what Olga said, with just more contentment and acceptance for what is, you tend to direct yourself in a very positive way. Um, how do you stay relevant, unique, and true to who you are as a person? And you talked about this earlier, but I want you to go a little bit more in depth.
I did. I did, because honestly, that question, when I saw it, I'm like, to who? Relevant to who? Like I don't need to stay relevant to anybody, right? And I that wasn't my mindset probably in my early 20s. But now I don't really care like what anybody thinks, or if it's relevant. You know, I think for me now, the what's important for me to be relevant to is my dog and my husband, right? Like that's who I need to be relevant to. And everything else, if I'm being me and if I'm aligned, then I'm making that impact that I'm supposed to. Going back to making a sandwich, right? Like, am I making that sandwich with all the love that I have that day? Because if I'm not, then I'm not being relevant. You know, I'm just kind of going with the flow. And I think that you're supposed to give everything you have to the moment that you have. And I don't always necessarily feel that way, right? It's a challenge some days, uh, but it's something that I'm conscious about now, right? And that's the difference. It doesn't necessarily, when I understand something, it doesn't make me good at it. It just makes me acknowledge it. And once you acknowledge it, then you can start working at it. And so I have been working on not worrying about the big picture, about the picture of being, maybe I shouldn't even say big picture, but being relevant to the world or how the world perceives me, or if I'm creating all of these ideas that I have in my head because I've always had them. A lot of people have great ideas. It's how do you execute them, right? And how do you execute the small moments that you do have on a daily basis? And if you are executing them with love, then it doesn't matter if people see it or not. That's the relevance that's the only relevance that I need.
And that's good. I'm so glad that you said that you feel that way and that you live that way now, because oftentimes, we do things to be validated, right, by people, by our external circle. And it really is important for us, in order for us to really live out our own specific DNA blueprint, is for us to be congruent with ourselves and not necessarily. And it's not that you don't care. I mean,
No.
it's really crude to say that you don't care what other people think, because I think that it's important for us to not necessarily be validated, but I think that that's why the circle of influence is so important, because I'm one of my love languages is words of affirmation. And I love to be acknowledged for the things that I do, not necessarily that I need it, you know what I mean? Because I'm going to do what I need to do anyway. But it is, I love that. I love hearing feedback. I love, feeling appreciated for the things that I do. But again, what you say is so true, is that it doesn't necessarily matter that you're relevant to everyone else in our society. It's that you are relevant to yourself, and the work that you're doing is relevant to you. And that's such a beautiful way to live. So thank you so much for pointing that out. Now, what practices do you implement to stay grounded and divinely connected to yourself and source, most importantly?
So I would say since the pandemic, or maybe not since the beginning of the pandemic, but maybe like 4 months in, I was getting very frustrated with some of the things that I was probably getting tasked to do at work specifically, and feeling like there was a lot of new things that I needed to accomplish that I hadn't done before. So I was getting overwhelmed by the thought that I had a lot to do, and I needed to do all of them because it was important because of what my line of work is. And so I was getting very stressed, right, about the things that I had to do. And then I don't know what happened, but I realized that uh, I don't need to rely on what I can do. I have a creator that is the source of everything, right? And so that if I could tap into that, then it's not really what I can do, but what source can do through me. So I started waking up, and before I would do anything, I would just thank God for the day and ask God that God would help me get through the things that I needed to get through for the day. So not worried so much about tomorrow, but what I just needed to accomplish that day. What were my tasks for the day? And allow me, and you work through those things so that I can get them done. Because I am a person that can get overwhelmed by the big picture and by everything that there is to do. So that hinders the work that I have to do in the day, because I'm already thinking about everything else that has to get done. But that has completely changed A, my stress level, B, my productivity, um, and C, my dependence, because now I don't depend on myself to get everything done, but I leave it to source. I leave it to my maker. I leave it to God to really work through me to get those things done. And so it's giving me a sense of gratitude, because at the end of the day, or at the end of the project, when I see the things that get done, I'm like, had I been depending on me, I would have not got that done, or that wouldn't have gotten done as well as it did. You know, like I have to step back sometimes and be like, that was really good. You know, like that was really good. But and this is not to say that I am doing all of that, because I know that it's not. I know that it's not me per se. I know that it's in the allowance, and it's in the me allowing my source to move through me, to use my gifts and to work through me, that those things get done. And that's become part of my daily practice. And again, this is not to say that I live in this cloud, because I don't, right? Like I still get stressed, and all of those things are still are very real. But I now have proof of what can get done when I put it into this higher perspective. And I really focusing on the day has really changed everything. Instead of all the things that need to get done, I focus on like what needs to get done this day. Please help me get this done this day, and it does, and it ends up working out.
So what would you say is one of your routines that you incorporate into your day to day to get yourself to that space? Because, I think that sometimes, even to the people that are listening, because it is a little bit challenging, especially we live in a noisy world. And if you have children, or if you have a spouse, if you have external factors that are kind of pulling you in directions, can you guide us through like maybe a daily ritual that you get into your daily routine, where you can get yourself to that space where you feel connected and you can hear that voice?
Yeah, it's starting the day with no noise, like just starting the day as soon as my eyes open. Well, actually, as soon as my eyes open, my dog is like right here. Duke is like right here. And I usually start by telling him how much I love him, how thankful I am for him, and then he's okay. And then I go into, God, thank you so much for this day. You know, the fact that I'm awake today and that I'm healthy is already, I've gained the life today. I have breath in my lungs. And we say that a lot, but like, do you really take the moment to honor that moment? And again, it's not to say that I wake up like that every day, but that's like what I'm trying to be more conscious about, right? So like I wake up and I try to be conscious that the mere fact that I woke up today is really a gift, right? And so then it goes into, please help me get these tasks done today, and please work through me so that I can see, because that's the thing, like God really wants to work through us. We just don't allow him permission to work through us, right? And God is a gentleman, so he doesn't push himself where nobody asks him. So I really ask him to but I ask him to guide my day and to help me get the things that I can't do on my own done. That's part of my ritual. But I do have a ritual where like nothing gets turned on. I go downstairs. I have my hot water with my greens. I give Duke his breakfast, but everything is in silent, right? Like I don't turn anything on because I don't want to be, I just don't want all of the noise to impact, because I can easily get impacted by the negativity that's happening in the world, right? And that's not to say that I'm naive to what is happening. I think that's important, and that's part of another time of my day, but not in the morning.
Absolutely. I'm so glad that you said that, because the way that we start our day determines the way that our days are going to unfold. And so it's really important for us to be mindful about how we start our day. And gratitude is it I like to say that gratitude is a magnet for miracles. And it's just the simple concept of being grateful for your breath alone. If you don't know this, taking a deep breath, a deep cleansing breath, has the capacity to reset your nervous system completely. So if you're a person who might struggle with anxiety, which I know that a lot of our society does, I have struggled with it my entire life until I became very like aware of my triggers, and I started to make changes based on how I was feeling, on the environments that I was in, because we're always, I mean, right now, Olga and I, as we're having this conversation, we're exchanging energy with each other. Even though she's in Chicago and I'm in Las Cruces, Mexico, we're literally exchanging energy. And this is what we do constantly as we go out into the world. So it's really important for us as we start our day, as we wake up and open our eyes, that we recognize that it's a blessing in itself for us to be able to wake up with breath, right? But also to check our energy to see where we're at for the day, right? Before we start exchanging our energy with anyone else, so that we are able to transmute any negative energy that might want to come in and infiltrate our energetic space, because this is our energetic space right here, and we have the capacity to let go or not allow anything that's going to negatively impact us throughout the day to not come in. So, grounding and connecting with source first and foremost is what we should all be doing as we go into our days. So, what words of wisdom would you give to those seeking a deeper understanding of themselves?
Um, I'd say figure out how you can give your talents away, because it's in that service that you find out who you are. You find out so much about yourself when you're providing a service, when you're providing of your time, when you're providing of your gifts. You find out A, what you like, what you're passionate about. You find out B, what you don't like and what you're not passionate about and what you don't want to do, right? So a lot of young people that I have talked to have told me that they don't know what their passions are. They don't know what they like. They don't know what they want to do. And I mean, I've talked to very smart young people, right? Like, and so it's not something that you learn per se, like in college. It's something that you have to experience to figure out what your passions are. But this world will have you thinking that it's about what you can get, what you can gain, and the relevance that you have or the status that you have. But again, look at history, look at the media. Do you see the people that have gained so much fortune and fame? And are they happy? when you continue to hear about divorces, when you continue to hear about suicides, when you continue to hear about overdoses, right? So obviously that's not fulfillment. So what is fulfillment? And I think that, not I think, I know that we're all created with a purpose and we've all been individually designed. I mean, your fingerprints are not the same as anybody else's in the world, right? So why would any of us think the same? We don't. You know, we all have very unique paths. We all have very unique journeys. So how do you figure out your journey? How do you figure out your passions? The way I can only give advice based on like what I have lived and how I have done things and what's worked out for me and what hasn't worked out for me. And I can honestly tell you, and you can attest to this, I have been giving away my passions, right? Like I was I was for 2 years, I was doing art workshops with inner city kids, and we were just donating our time, you know, and it was about helping them communicate and helping them find a place where they were able to to really tap into creativity, because that's what I needed. That's what I did through all of my teenage years, right? Like I had those sources. So when I got to a point where I could do it, that's what I wanted to give. Now, did I gain from that? I don't know. Like, right? Like what happened after that? Uh, I don't know, right? Like nothing, there was no fame after that. There wasn't like an award for doing all of that, but it's led me to figure out who I am, right? And I think that that's really what we're here for. We're actually here to serve. We're actually here to give, but it just hasn't been packaged that way. It's been packaged, the world has been packaged in what you can gain and what you can get out of situations and how much you can make out of things. And I'm not one to say that you shouldn't, right? You should gain, you should make money, because you can't pour from an empty cup, right? But you have to know who you are in order to really help others thrive. And the way that you figure out who you are is for me, it's been tapping into source, right? Because when I get to know my maker, I know how I was made. And then I know what I'm made out of. And I know the capacity and the capabilities that I have. And then when I get to serve, which I've done in a lot of different art capacities, then I get to interact with people and I get to hear from them. And then I don't know, there's been a lot of fulfillment that has come from those situations that has led me to develop my own gifts. And even the things that I do today have been a development. It was like almost like I gave myself an internship, right? Like I went to my own college. I did my own thing, and I developed uh, my own curriculum to where I'm at now. And I wouldn't trade any of that for now. So I guess the question was, what was the question? I went,
Already did it. What words of wisdom would you give those seeking a deeper
yeah,
understanding?
I would say find out ways that you can give your talents away. And in
Yes,
those moments, you're going to find out so much about you.
absolutely. Absolutely. I like to, and I'm exactly on that same wavelength, because I've been giving away my gifts for a very long time. And you do find your purpose in the service of others. And Olga is so right. We are here to serve one another. And oftentimes it won't be reciprocated, and it won't be given back to you in the form of monetary giftings, right? But what I will tell you is that you find so much fulfillment when you are putting yourself out into the world and you are utilizing what God, your creator, your source, whatever you deem that to be, has given you, because everybody does have a very unique DNA code. We are all here to do something very specific. Olga and I have very similar giftings. In fact, we've lived a very similar path, but yet very different. And although we do a lot of the same things, we are in a completely different market. And this world is so large yet so small where we have the capacity to interchange our gifts with each other, collaborate, and just really inspire each other to not only do more of what we're about here to do, but we can also serve on a grander scale because there's so many people that need what you have to offer. And so, with that being said, Olga, do you have any finishing statements?
I mean, there were all these questions were so deep. I hope I did a good job in expressing myself. Again, the ego is interesting because you think as the ego as this being an overinflated uh, personality within you, but the reality is that the ego can also be this voice that tells you that you actually can't do it. Right. And so even when you asked me to do this podcast, I do a lot of webinars for work and on a very professional level. But when it was about the questions were going to be so personal and so on a deeper level, that it made me kind of question at first, right? Because I am kind of a private person. I mean, I share some things, but I'm kind of private. I don't know if you would agree. I don't really go. I've had so many spiritual experiences, but I don't really tell people about them because they're either off the wall where you're not going to understand them and it's going to make me sound crazy, or they're just so deep that I feel like they were meant for me, right? And so they're not necessarily for anybody else. So when you asked me, there's this other spectrum. The other side of the coin of the ego is to tell you that you can't do it. Like you can't share that kind of stuff. Like that's very personal. You can't share that, right? But you don't know how you're going to be affecting other people, or how, or then the ego also tells you like, well, how are you going to sound, and are you going to be telling too much, or like that those things are very private. But I guess your last question was what would you say, and that's to share your gifts. And I think you also get to a level where your stories may impact someone, and perhaps it's that one person, right? That one person that listens to it and is like, oh, okay, like that kind of helped me through the day, or maybe I can take that, and I've been really struggling with my day. Maybe I can wake up in the morning and start practicing that. Maybe that'll help me, and maybe it will. And so then that's that one person that perhaps you would have not reached had you been too proud, or in your mind, or in my mind, thinking like, oh, I'm too humble, I'm too private, which is all the ego. It's the ego telling you those things. um, so I guess that would be my last words, would just be like, get outside of that comfort zone. And that has always been the place where I have grown the most, is when I am out of that zone. And again, although being on the camera is something that I do for work sometimes, being personal is not something that I do. And I only do it through like my Liberating Mella when I do a poem, and I don't know if you've seen any of those slides. Like I'll do slides of like the lessons of the month that I get, but I do them in a very like poetic way. And that's the only way I've known how to express myself, is to do it through my art. So when I am telling a story, I'm telling it through a poem. So to tell my story now, it's a little intimidating, but again, it's like, get out of that. Don't listen to your ego. Listen to your intuition, and and that is going to get you to where you need to be.
Yes. Thank you so much for sharing that because The only way that we expand is if we get out of our comfort zone. There's no growth in the comfort bubble. And I can attest to that 100% because as Olga knows, I am I am notorious for stepping out of my comfort zone. And a lot of times I'm very uncomfortable. In fact, when I decided to start this channel, I was very uncomfortable, but I realized that the only way for me to expand and to share what I have experienced, because I will tell you that my journey has been very unusual and I have learned so many life lessons. And we're here to teach, we're here to share. We're really here to tell our story. And through our story, we are able to inspire others to step outside of their comfort zone and do the very things that we were brought here on earth to do. And so, I just really I pray and I meditate right. I mean, I meditate on these all the time, but I really my whole purpose behind doing this is to share with you how multicultural we really are as a society, and that although we are very uniquely designed, we all have, the capacity to come together, as a group, as a collective, to share stories, to inspire each other, to level each other up, to really step into those platforms that we really need to be in order for us to, to fulfill our divine purpose. So I really encourage you to continue to tune in as you trickle into these conversations. There are many conversations on this platform now that are circulating through YouTube and through my aculturedSociety.com blog. All of the information to connect with Olga will be below this video. And you also have the opportunity now to share and circulate your love by donating, monetary to see this channel grow. Right now, I am sharing my giftings with just because it's a passion of mine. And I really want to see this channel grow because there are so many messages in here that need to be heard by so many more people. And these people that are in front of me need to be seen because they are circulating some gifts that are so amazing. So, with this, I leave you, and I'm so excited that you will continue to be a part of these conversations. Thank you so much for joining us today, and I'm sending you so much love and light. Blessings.